I'd lost everything in 2013, everything, except my family and my health. But I lost my integrity. I lost my businesses, 4 businesses within 6 months. I lost my home, my vehicles, my bank account, my retirement fund, everything. And I was in a pretty deep depression. It was hard to get up in the morning. The only thing that got me up were my kids because I had to get them to school.
Yeah.
But those days I had to make a choice. Do I drive my daughter to school, which was 20 minutes away? Or do I tell her, stay at your dad's because he lives 3 minutes away and he has more gas in his car to get you there than I do? That was where I was at.
Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of The Mountains We Climb. In each episode here, we will be diving into the mind of someone who has overcome significant challenge and adversity in their life so we can see what is really possible and what it really takes. I'm your host, Jordan Kilpatrick Smith, and today we're going to be exploring the journey of Diana Lockett and her story of loss and rebuilding to finding her voice, acknowledging her worth, beauty, wisdom, and the supportive beliefs she developed along the way. Diana, thank you so much for being here with me.
Thank you so much for having me, Jordan. It's my pleasure.
Just before we start, everyone, I'd like to remind you that you can post your comments and questions throughout the live in the comment section right below this video in the Facebook group. All right, so Diana, where does your story start?
So really, my story starts with a lot of the limiting beliefs that I was given when I was growing up. And the biggest one being, I believe that, good little girls are meant to be seen and not heard. And that was reinforced many times. I was like the chatterbox in the house. I spoke for my twin sister until she was almost 4. So she didn't speak until she was 4. And the belief was reinforced. I have a little prop here that I keep close by to remind me, these little chatter teeth that you wind them up and they chatter.
Right.
And that was given to me one year for Christmas in my stocking. And I remember feeling this pit in my stomach, like everyone's making fun of how much I'm talking. And so my voice really doesn't matter. And I carried that with me. And I shut down my voice through a lot of my life. Not that I didn't speak, not that I didn't have an opinion, but I didn't really share my opinion. I didn't really take a stance for the things that I believed in. I didn't really use my voice to set my boundaries, to express my joy, to express my grief, to touch my anger. So not accessing my voice really shut down a big part of me. And I went through many different challenges in my life, and I don't want to give away too much because I've written a chapter in a book called The Ignite for Female Change Makers, which just came into my home yesterday. So I'm super excited, and I would love to send you to the book to get more details about my story. So I'm not going to give away too much, but there were a lot of times in my life where I just accepted the way things were without really checking in, what do I want and how can I express that? And I found myself just going on this ride of following and playing out the life that was kind of written for me, rather than really checking in, what do I want? How do I want my life to play out? What responsibility do I want to take for my life? And so throughout my life,
Diana, what led to that?
What led to my following the path that others had laid out for me?
Yeah.
Well, I think the big contributor to that is being given this message as a very young child. And I want to just say, these were sort of like unconscious messages, right? We're given all these messages and conditionings as we grow up, not because our parents did anything wrong, but because they don't know better.
Right.
So right from this early age, when this was given to me, it's like, yeah, your voice, it's just a joke. It doesn't really matter, right? So that started the shutdown. And then I learned to follow the conditionings. So we are all given conditionings growing up. And Wayne Dyer, one of my favorite spiritual teachers and authors, has this saying that I heard him say when I saw him live, that, parents grow this little baby inside them for 9-10 months, and they nurture it and they send it all the love, and they recognize it as a cherished miracle. And then when the baby is born, they say, thank you, God, we'll take it from here. And then they start to layer on their beliefs and their conditioning. And then beliefs or conditioning are layered on then from other places, school, society, friends, media. And so I lived this really good girl life. I really did. I did the things that I was supposed to do. and I didn't challenge them, and I didn't stop to look at them. So this is something that's played out like since I was a little girl. And I was a very shy little girl. I would like hide under the table when people would come visit. I was
Right.
really quiet. So I learned that very, very early, that I needed to stay small.
Right. And so did this come, that ties into that chatterbox. Is that right?
It does. So I played small. And when I tried to find my voice, it was ridiculed, right? So I was reinforced for being small. And then fast forward, I went through a very unhealthy divorce. I had a beautiful daughter. We had a beautiful house. People thought it was a great picture, but I was so unhappy in that relationship. And I didn't know how to, I didn't really know myself. So I couldn't really know myself in relationship with someone else.
Right.
So when I left that, the outcome of that was beyond what I could have expected. It was a really challenging time of my life, but I was able to rebuild. So I've had many opportunities in my life where I've had to rebuild.
Yeah.
And each one helped me a little bit more to find my voice. The greatest losses that I had was in 2013, where I literally was taken to my knees and lost everything. And again, you'll read some of this in the book, but what you won't necessarily know is the amount of humiliation and shame and embarrassment. Yeah, and just the grief that I experienced at that time. And I really believe that when we're taken to our knees and we have these experiences in our life where we have no choice but to touch our deep pain,
Mm-hmm.
it's not just the pain of that moment, but it's the pain that's layered on from previous traumas and pains in your life, or in my life. I'll speak for myself, that I wasn't able to give voice to, because remember, I didn't have a voice. So
Yeah.
if I felt scared that my mom left because my parents were fighting, I didn't know how to express that because nobody would listen to it. I felt super scared, a situation where there was an attempted suicide in my home. I found the person. My parents came home, picked up the person, and brought her back to the wedding that they were attending. It was like the secret. Okay, we're not going to deal with this. We're just going to hide it, push it under the carpet. So this is what I grew up learning.
Right.
And then I went to university. I got a degree. I went to graduate school. I got another degree. I had this amazing career. And yet there was a part of me that just didn't know who I was. And I had, thankfully, these really great ways of channeling some of that tension that was running because I didn't know who I was. It results in low-lying tension, a little anxiety and stress. And I channeled these in really positive ways. So I'm really grateful that I had that, because there's alternatives. I could have turned to drugs and alcohol and addictions, and instead I turned to fitness.
Right. So you took these anxieties that were kind of underlying throughout your
Yeah.
life and you
Mm-hmm.
channeled them into something positive,
Right.
like fitness, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm
And
with
I
it.
did that through most of my 20s and through my 30s. And then by about my early 30s, I realized that I couldn't ignore these knocks that I was getting at, like, you're not living your life. This isn't your life. This isn't what you're meant to do. I kept getting these messages, and they came so powerful, so strong. They came in meditations. They came through visualizations. They came anytime I got really quiet. And so I started meditating around that time. And because I was really good at avoiding my life, I used meditation as avoidance. And so I want to warn people, like, these vices that we have to avoid and to numb out, they can be really healthy, but there's still a numbing feature.
Right.
So
That's a
I would
very good point.
meditate. Yeah.
Right.
So I would work out 2 hours a day. I would meditate sometimes 2 to 3 hours a day. That became my vice, right? I don't
Mm-hmm.
have to deal with life. I'm just going to channel this connection with earth and my spiritual self, but I'm not going to necessarily deal with life. So there was a massive disconnect. I call this the vertical connection was very, very strong. But my horizontal connection, where I can connect my heart to others and let them in and feel my pain and welcome the pain of others, like, that was a complete disconnect for me.
Right. So I
And
just want to slow things down for just a moment here. So you had these beliefs as a child that were, and they were like unconscious
mhm,
messages, right?
mhm,
And so as you're growing up, you learn to play small. You learn
mhm,
to to quiet your voice. And you said you still have opinions, but they weren't put out there, and it was very much kept to yourself, right? And I just want to briefly go back to your first marriage. Is that okay?
Sure.
And so you said you went into this marriage, and things obviously weren't great for you because it didn't work, right? So how did those beliefs play into that? How did those beliefs play into how you showed up into that marriage, and how all of that came about?
Yeah. So it's a great question, and I've never spoken about this before, so it's a vulnerable moment for me. I really went along with things, and it wasn't that anything was horrible. It just wasn't deep and rich and connected.
Right.
So I went along. I mean, first of all, I went along with getting married. Like I'm not sure that either one of us really wanted to get married. No, I wanted to get married. I'm not sure that he did. I wanted to get married because we'd been together since I was 17. I was 26 when we got married. I was really young. And so I stayed in this relationship because it's the only thing I knew. And it wasn't that it was like abusive or anything like that. Like at the end, he got very angry. And there were some moments that, I don't ever want to send him under the bus, but it was really challenging for me. And yet I'd never stopped to really say, is this the person for me?
Right.
Does this person allow me to grow and to connect with the deepest part of myself in the healthiest, most fulfilling, joyful, connected way? And it wasn't until I started in my early 30s to do my deep meditation practice. I started going to some counseling. I started doing some energy work. I got my Reiki certification. When I started really growing in that direction, I realized, okay, this is probably not going to work out. And that was really threatening for him. And so I don't blame him for having the reactions he did, because I really changed and he didn't.
Right.
And I think that happens in relationships quite a bit. When one person grows or takes a different path, it doesn't make the other person wrong where they are. It's just that there's a time where it's okay to say, we're not meeting each other's needs anymore. We're not growing together anymore. In fact, we're growing apart. And
Yeah.
that's what happened.
Yeah. And so for anyone that's going through that, because I imagine that there are a lot of people who find themselves in those situations, right?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Where did you find that strength when you had those beliefs because those beliefs I'm imagining would keep you from saying something like that, right? So where did you find that from?
Okay, so I'm going to share a story that was going to be reserved for my own personal book, which I'm in the process of writing. I was doing a meditation. I was extremely unhappy. I had moved into a separate bedroom for months now. I had been contemplating leaving. I had asked him to leave. We had a daughter. She was only 5, 6, just turned 6. And I would meditate these days 2 or 3 hours a day. And I was doing a meditation, and it was a guided meditation, and it stopped, it ended. And I just heard this voice inside me that said, stay with the silence, stay in the stillness. And within about 2 minutes of breathing and being still, eyes closed, I felt and saw in front of me a presence that literally made me jump back. It was the presence of Jesus. Now, I have to explain, I'm not a religious person. I was brought up in a Catholic home. I'm a very spiritual person. I feel very connected. I believe in an intelligent source, but I don't have an affiliation with a religion.
Right.
Jesus appeared in front of me. And I went, wow, why are you here? Mm-hmm. I remember like it was yesterday asking this question. And the message I got was to remind you that you have courage. And I said, I cannot feel it. I did not feel my courage. I said, I can't feel it. Where is it? Where do I find it? And the message I got was, it's inside you. Now I realized Jesus was my inner wisdom manifesting as that for me to understand. It's inside me. I told my ex-husband the next day that I was leaving. I got rented a townhouse 2 days later and moved in 5 days later. It was like that quick.
Yeah.
Because I didn't trust that my courage would stay. I worried that I would be talked back, sort of sucked back into that, what I call the matrix. The matrix is the place of like unconditioned living that most people do when they don't step and question, what am I doing with my life? What do I want? what can I offer and how can I serve?
Yeah.
So that was a really powerful experience for me. Probably the first time that I'd ever really felt my courage and really ever felt my courage. And then acting upon it gave me so much strength
Yes.
and freedom and joy. Like I was beyond ecstatic. It was such a great time in my life.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that vulnerable story with us, especially one that, you haven't been sharing. And so what I'm hearing is that it's like you really looked inside yourself and reclaimed that power of choice,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the power
Yeah.
to choose what's going to happen in your life. And this huge obstacle, because when I know for myself, when there's like a time where there's a big decision, often we just want to shrink away from it. And we're like, you know what, maybe it's easier just to put the blinders on and continue.
Yeah.
But the joy and the happiness that comes on the other side of that is incredible, right?
Absolutely. And that's what I've experienced through most of my life. Whereas now I can look back at the experiences that I've had and see how everything was happening for my awakening.
Right.
Everything was happening to bring me to this moment here. All of the pain, all of the grief, all of the fear, all of the anger, everything that I had needed to be claimed. I needed to feel it, to be able to express it, to allow myself to be here where I can be fully present and real, authentic and vulnerable, and access those parts of myself that are a little bit edgy. And on the other side is my immense joy.
Right.
Whereas in my first 30 years, I lived in the middle of what I call mediocrity, right? Didn't have this great joy. I was okay, but I didn't have this immense joy, nor because I didn't allow myself to feel the deepest pains. And then when I started opening up, and courage was a massive change maker for me, opening up to my courage and then starting to lean into what else have I not been accessing? What other qualities are in me that I'm not even aware of?
Right.
And how can I start excavating? And I literally went on this excavation journey of figuring out, what does it feel like to be me? Like, who am I? And then I unleashed for me so much. And it's been like, that was 16 years ago, that experience. And since then, my life has gone like this. And in the yoga, I'm also a yoga instructor. In the yoga language, we call it spanda. Spanda means like the ups and downs, the ebb and flows of life. And in the deepest lows that I've had, which came after that time, which came about 8 years ago, what got me through them was this knowing that, okay, I've felt this before, and I've moved through it. So I no longer sit in those lows for very long. It's not that I don't acknowledge them and feel them, because I do. I really do. Probably more than ever, because I've opened up to allow myself to feel. And when I feel one thing, the joy, I feel the grief really deeply. But I have a practice now of being able to move through my feelings so that I don't push them down. I don't put a lid on them. I don't kick them into the basement of my unconscious. And my nervous system now has learned how to release in a way that's most of the time, not always, because I am perfectly imperfect and I have triggers and I have moments, but most of the time I can like open the faucet to my nervous system to release a little bit of whatever needs to come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I can sort of close it down. When I first started doing this work about 24 years ago, I was afraid to open up, to feel anything, because I had this immense fear that if I opened up, I would never be able to close the faucet.
Yeah.
And I would just cry forever. I really felt that was like I had so much grief in me from my childhood. So I've learned now through beautiful practices, and the best one for me, the massive transformation came through work that I did with Christian Pankhurst from Heart IQ in the Netherlands. And it was a way that allowed me to express everything that was inside me. And it was met with love and support and unconditional acceptance. And it was like, really? Like, you want to see that really messy part of me? Because it can be pretty dark. And they said, like, bring it on. And when I was able to do that, it literally like just opened up the channel in me. That was in 2017. That opened up a channel in me to really find my authenticity, because before that I had been teaching. I had been successful in my 30-year career as a speech language pathologist. I was teaching yoga, I was teaching meditation and mindfulness, I was coaching, but there was a part of me that always held back. There was a part of me that thought, no, they don't want to hear that.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's too spiritual. Oh, if I use the word God, they might think I have a religious relationship to that, and I don't want that to be my share. So I held back. And then all of a sudden, when I was able to really access that part of myself that released, opened up a channel, and the way that I describe it is a channel of grace. I can let myself, I channel language and words without filter. So it's, some people might say I speak my heart. I don't always know where the words come from.
Right.
But they come through at the right time. I sometimes look back and say, wow, that was really cool. Who said that?
Yeah.
and it's because I get out of my way. But it took me 52 years to learn to get out of my way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so as you were in these like really deep pits, right? You're talking about the ebb and flow.
Yeah.
It was, am I correct in understanding that it was like through the acknowledgement of what you were actually feeling that we are able to move and navigate that?
Yeah. You've nailed it. That's the part that most people don't want to go through.
Right.
And so what happens is, if we're not willing to feel and acknowledge and accept what is in the moment, I have a teacher who always said, it is what it is. So what are you going to do about it, yogi? Now, there's this belief that yogis have this conscious awareness, that they're awake. Well, the reality is yogis, yoga teachers, yoga students are very clear on the vertical path of their connection to God and the God of their understanding and Mother Earth. But this relational piece of feeling is not necessarily well cultivated in yogis. Because what do? We don't feel good. We go and we meditate. I feel good. But we're not feeling. We're not giving space to what needs to come up.
Right.
When I first started meditating, this is in my early 30s, I would feel nauseous. Like I literally felt like I was going to vomit. And I thought there was something wrong with me. So I would try to shut that part of myself down and just go back to, okay, just be with the light. Just be with the light. Don't feel this. Put this away. And it's like the meditators and yogis who get like thoughts and they think they're doing something wrong. That's just all part of being embodied. Right? Part of our embodied experience is mind, body. There's no disconnection, no separation between mind, body, and spirit. So we welcome it all. And it's when we move towards the pain, we can start feeling goodness, even when we feel bad.
Yeah.
And that's what I learned through the hard IQ work that I did. And prior to that, when I was in really I'd lost everything in 2013, everything, except my family and my health. But I lost my integrity. I lost my businesses, 4 businesses within 6 months. I lost my home, my vehicles, my bank account, my retirement fund, everything. And I was in a pretty deep depression. It was hard to get up in the morning. The only thing that got me up were my kids, because I had to get them to school.
Yeah.
But those days I had to make a choice. Do I drive my daughter to school, which was 20 minutes away? Or do I tell her, stay at your dad's because he lives 3 minutes away and he has more gas in his car to get you there than I do? That was where I was at. I'd lost everything in 2013, everything, except my family and my health. But I lost my integrity. I lost my businesses, 4 businesses within 6 months. I lost my home, my vehicles, my bank account, my retirement fund, everything. And I was in a pretty deep depression. It was hard to get up in the morning. The only thing that got me up were my kids, because I had to get them to school.
Yeah.
But those days I had to make a choice. Do I drive my daughter to school, which was 20 minutes away? Or do I tell her, stay at your dad's because he lives 3 minutes away and he has more gas in his car to get you there than I do? That was where I was at. Where do I get my next liter of milk? That was where I was at. I was feeding, a family of 4. And so that's where I don't want to give the impression that we just remember that there's this wave and we're going to move through it and it's all good. Because in those moments, I felt despair. I felt hopelessness. I felt deep, deep, deep pain. And it was by feeling it by being able to feel it. But then I had to make a choice. And I always say you have a chance always to make a choice to create a change. So the first step is honor what you're feeling, but then give it a voice. Oh my gosh, I'm feeling so dark in my heart right now. I don't see any light. I feel my belly is getting so tight and contracted. My eyes are heavy. My head is pounding. My bones feel heavy. Like that's the language of depression. That's the sensation. That's what the body's feeling. So I've got this practice of being able to label what's happening. And then what do I need? Well, some days I need to stay like in bed, but I don't stay there for more than a day.
Right.
Because I know that's not healthy, and that's just feeding the depression. And depression truly is lack of feeling. And my entire life practice is turning to the feelings, go towards the feelings. So I need to acknowledge that all of that is part of me. It is. And I have a choice to make a change. So what are the practices? I might put on music and I might move my body and just be willing to feel. And Tony Robbins talks about emotion is energy in motion, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't like your state, change your state. And again, it's not about a bypass. It's not a spiritual bypass where I just don't want to feel this, so I'm just going to get up and go watch Netflix or go and do my yoga practice or go and work out. There's time for that, and there's time to really feel. So I take the time to really feel. And whatever comes up with that feeling, I let it be. I don't judge it. So sometimes I need to cry. Sometimes I might let out a curling yell, and it's primal and it's old. Like it's not me today. It's me at 2 whose mother left in the car and left me alone with an abusive father, right? So it's like that comes up for me. So we time travel to be able to help to heal some of these emotional wounds, these traumatic wounds.
Mm-hmm.
And in the acknowledgement that, you know what, that's part of me and this is part of me and I'm okay. And I can make a choice and I can start climbing this mountain. I can start climbing the mountain, but I don't have a destination. My destination is to be present to what I'm feeling.
Yes.
Just to be there with it and cherish it and honor it. And remember that through all of those, I am still a friggin' miracle, just like all of you.
Yeah. And there are so many like absolute golden messages in there. Like, I think if I had listened to this a few years ago, there would have been a number of things that I missed, I didn't pick up. And so I just want to go over them again to really like help them sink in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I have missed anything, please jump in and correct me. But what I'm hearing is the mindset that you were in is that when you're at the lowest point is stuff it down. Don't acknowledge it. Don't feel it, because that way we can keep moving forward, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what really has to happen is that curiosity and coming from a place of no judgment to explore the emotions, to feel them. And the way out or the way over is through those emotions. It's so when you're finding yourself in that mindset where you can't move forward, where you're feeling stuck, take a moment and acknowledge what you're really feeling and give it a voice so that you can choose to take action.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Exactly. And if you don't take the time to be with it, to acknowledge it, then the action that you take very often for most people will be a numbing action. It'll be, you know, 5 or 6 hours of Netflix. It'll be alcohol. It'll be drugs. It'll be online shopping. It'll be sex. It'll be gambling. It'll be whatever it is. So the addictions end up numbing the feelings that one is not wanting to feel.
Yeah.
And we are probably, according to Brene Brown, the most addicted cohort in history, addicted to everything. And so part of that is because we don't want to take the time to feel the vulnerability of feeling. So we just say, okay, you know what? That's in the past. I'm just going to move on. I don't have to go deal with my past. I'm totally content in this moment. And that's true until a trigger comes up and the past sort of comes right, literally like just goes right through your nervous system and comes out in a way that we might not be proud of.
Yeah.
Right. So we need to take this time to feel and to be gentle and tender with whatever we're feeling, not to make it wrong. And I still see parents bringing up children that say, like, stop crying. It's okay. You don't have to cry. There's nothing to cry about. They're doing it with good intentions. But the reality is, a child crying is a child expressing pain. And expressing pain is releasing tension from the nervous system. And the way that I've learned it through Heart IQ is when we have a trauma or a pain or a disappointment or a grief or whatever it is, a loss, we kink our nervous system like a garden hose. So we literally close it in that moment. So I'm just going to close it and shut that part of myself out. And then I'm going to close the next one. Oh, another trauma at age 12, close it. Oh, 25, loss, heartbreak, close up. And then what happens is we close down our life force. We call it prana in the yogic terms. We close down our life force. When we close down our life force, we can't be fully present. So if your decision, if you're someone out there who's made a commitment in your life to practice presence, mindfulness, to be able to feel joy, you need to go into the other, the other range, the other polarity of everything else that is not that is not joy, and be present to that and say, thank you for showing me what it is to be the spectrum of a human being, because we are embodied. So this is part of what we're going to experience. And I'd love to add that right now we are in a first. So quick summary of the chakras. Chakras are energy centers in our bodies in yogic terms. And the root chakra, the lowest chakra, is part of our sense of safety and security, and it controls sort of our legs and our bones. And in our nervous system, if it develops very early on, if we are feeling right now insecure and unsafe in the world, if that's your experience, and I get it, right? There's a lot of people that have financial insecurity, job insecurity, tons of fear about being sick. They're grieving. They're losing people they love. We can't bypass that. We need to acknowledge that. So as spiritual teachers, it's easy to say, you know what, there's so many great things happening right now. The earth is healing herself, and that is amazing. I have felt so nourished from this, COVID-19 lockdown that we've had. I feel so nourished and healthy. And I need to acknowledge that there are people that are really grieving and suffering right now. And so what happens at the root chakra, that's what we call the first chakra crisis in the world. What happens if we don't acknowledge that is all the other pains, traumas, losses, grief that we've had in our life. It's not just this current trauma that you're feeling, it's all the other traumas that you haven't processed. So we call them undigested traumas that start showing up. So we start having these reactions that seem stronger than they would normally. And again, I don't want to minimize that this isn't massively traumatic, because I get that it is. I know that it is. Yeah. So the way through it, you said it absolutely. The way to healing, the way to get from pain to joy is to go through the pain, not to go around it. That's what I call the spiritual bypass.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That was a lesson that I learned the hard way. And I don't want to go into too much of the details because this is about you, but I went through that shutdown. I went through all those kinks. And what I learned is that the only way is to dive into the emotion. Mm-hmm. And now anytime I feel anything, I grab the bull by the horns, I look at it and I'm like, all right, what do you want? What are you telling me? Right?
Yeah.
Without judgment, just being curious about it.
Absolutely.
And so we've looked a bit at the mindset of where you were, right? The playing small, the being quiet, the feeling shut down. Where have you gone to? What is the mindset now that you've gone through all of that pain and digested it and worked with it?
Yeah. So as I mentioned about, 7-8 years ago when I lost everything, what brought me out of it, every morning I would remember life is happening for me. There are nights where I would go to bed feeling victim. Like, how dare they? Because there are people who contributed to my loss, and I take full responsibility as well. But I would go to bed at night and think, how dare they? And I would cry myself to sleep. And in the mornings, I would wake up and the sun would shine again. And I would say, okay, I get this now. Life is happening for me. How can I take responsibility? How can I meet what life is giving me right now? And so that belief of life is happening for me, I had to really live it practice it, trust it, remind myself again and again. And that has taken me through to where I am today, where I truly believe that life is happening for me, that everything happens for my awakening, and that I am 100% responsible for my life. 100%.
Yes.
And I get to make choices every day. And I need to be mindful and conscious of the choices I make and how they impact other people. But truly, I make the choices that serve my heart first, because I know that if I can be nourished, present, mindful, I can be in service for other people. And they're not always going to be the most popular choices. And I know that.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. And that is a hard path to walk.
Yeah.
It is very challenging to wake up and say, this shitstorm I'm finding myself in, I'm going to take 100% responsibility for this.
Yeah.
And I am going to make the choices because life is happening for me.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
What happens on the other side of that is incredible, right?
Mm-hmm. It's so incredible. And oh my gosh, in the last 3 years, like what has the joy that I've been able to access, the grief that I've been able to access, and I'm going to say joy in my grief. So now when I express grief, there's joy in the expression and release of grief.
Yeah.
It's not heavy. It doesn't take me down to a place of darkness. I actually bring the light onto the darkness, and somehow they have this beautiful dance that feels really juicy inside of my nervous system.
Yeah.
So that's been the greatest awakening for me. And because of that, I've become very clear about, like, I'm 55 now. I've been very clear about what I want to do in the next season of my life, what I want from myself, from my family, how I want to contribute, the legacy I want to leave. And the legacy is sort of like what teachings, what sharings, how do I want to be remembered in that way? It has nothing to do with like financial, because I'm still rebuilding that part from all my losses, and my business has exploded.
Right.
In the last 3 years, in all areas. I have to say no, because I've got too much work. So right now, what I do is I help my clients I call myself a realignment coach, which is a life coach. And my focus is to help people to recognize where they need to realign in their lives, like where they've moved out of alignment. So for my first 32 years, I was out of alignment. I wasn't living my truth. I was living what we call brules. Now, I didn't make up that term. Vishen Lakhiani of Mind Valley made up that term. Brule, can I swear?
Sure.
Rules are bullshit rules, right? So they're the rules that your family, society, teachers, friends, partners imposed on you. Like my rule, my biggest one is good little girls are meant to be seen and not heard.
Right.
Good little girls don't express their anger. Good little girls don't express their opinion. Well, what I've learned since then is that on the other side of anger, on the same spectrum of anger, is passion.
Yes.
And so when I was able to touch my anger, now I have this, oh my gosh, this overwhelming passion to really make a difference in the world. And I select my clients who are really going to want to do the deep work of wanting to find out what their truth is and access their joy through their pain to be able to make a difference in the lives of the people that they serve. And their people might be, because I believe we're all leaders. So their people might be their family, it might be their colleagues, it might be their community, or they might be leaders, CEOs of a business. Mm-hmm. And people come to me, a term that one of my friends uses is when they're feeling spiritually bankrupt. Right? They've done so much in their life. Their bank account is full. The house is big. The cottage is like on the lake, and yet they're not feeling fulfilled. Right? It's because there's a rule along there that told them that accomplishment and financial success is what's most valued. And yet they get to a point where they tune in and they say, I don't know if that's what I value. So my work with them is to sort of excavate and help them realign to figure out, what do they value? Yeah. What do they want to bring into the world? And it's not that money's not important, because people believe on a spiritual path money's not important. It is spiritual to feed your kids, right? Yes. You need money. And yet, if that becomes your only way of measuring your success or one's success in life, there'll be a sense of emptiness. So I always ask people to think about when they look back at their life on their deathbed, go with no regrets. Look back, and people are never going to say, I'm so glad I worked those 70-hour weeks. I'm
Yeah.
so glad, I left $500,000 to my family. I'm so glad that I had that cottage. No, it's like, what are the connections? What are the relationships? What are the longings? What fills you up? What makes you feel nourished? And move towards that. So the realignment coaching is about moving towards recognizing how can you feel nourished in your life and clear. And there's a presence and a clarity that comes from that you can feel and access joy and potential. And nothing has to change in your life,
Yeah.
your insides.
Yes, absolutely. Again, it's not something that I think I would have understood a number of years ago,
Mm.
but because of my own development, my own personal growth, I am so with you. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to speak to the people who are listening that are in the position that I was a few years ago, where you're listening to this and you're like, what are you talking about? I do not get it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to see the change in your life, be willing to be curious here. Don't
Mm-hmm.
shut that door just because it's different
Mm-hmm. Or difficult.
or difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because nothing has been easy. I mean, there has been easy. I shouldn't say nothing. That would be a generalization. Many of my biggest breakthroughs came through my most massive breakdowns. And so it was very difficult.
Yeah.
And it would have been really easy for me to say, like all these other all my businesses that I ran, the ones that I lost and the ones that I'm growing now and into now, like I don't really need them. I've got a successful career for 30 years as a speech language pathologist, helping other kids, by the way, find their voices when I didn't even realize that that was healing me.
Yeah.
And yet, I move towards the difficult in a way, but I bring a sense of ease and flow and acceptance. I don't push. I just allow. And in the allowance, things are happening that are just beyond my expectations.
Yeah.
But I
I,
do the work. It's not like I just sit back and say, come on, universe, bring it to me. Like I have to show up.
yes.
Right?
And I think that that's such a critical point that, again, just speaking from my own experience, I didn't understand how important it was to do the work. And it sounds kind of silly to say that, but I think, we're listening to all of this. We're saying, okay, I got this problem. I'm going to fill my mind with all of this good stuff, but then we don't go and take any action.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
in the showing up that everything happens, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. My very first business that was open, it was a yoga studio in Georgetown. I spent pretty well all of my retirement funds and more building it. And on the first day, we opened the doors, and I just believed if you build it, they will come. And that first day, we made $40,000. It was like beyond imagination,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So what people don't see is how much went into building it.
Right.
It wasn't just I opened the doors and thousands of people came through. I did a lot of work to build it, right? And every day I do my work. Every day I practice in the morning breath work, meditation, tuning in, feeling my body. This is my realignment program. If I can just give a quick summary of what it means to realign, it means being
Yeah.
real. REAL is real in realign. So the real is remember. I remember every day that every day is a blessing and I am a gift just like you. And there's no separation. And one of my teachers says, I am you cleverly disguised as me. And I believe that.
Can you
And
say
I
that
need
again?
to, I am you cleverly disguised as me. The reason I need to remember that is because when I feel a disconnect from someone, I feel a judgment around someone, I feel angry about someone and the choices they made, there's a part that I need to remember that they're a soul having a human experience just like me. So it allows me to find a place of acceptance and like how much, and then I look at myself, like if I'm judging them, where am I judging myself? Right?
Yeah.
So remember that you are a miracle. It's a 1 in 50 billion chances that you would be here, and you're here, and me too. The E in real is to explore. So every day I take the time to tune in and explore what's moving inside me. Where do I feel opened? Where do I feel closed? If I can't feel my closeness, I can't feel my openness. If my
Yeah.
heart feels closed towards someone, then I won't, and I don't feel it, then I can't open my heart to someone. Where do I feel tight? Where do I feel tension? Like, how do I know what I need unless I can tune in? The A, R-E-A, is allow. So then once I notice what's happening, I don't judge it and I don't have to change it. I just notice. I give voice to it. and I allow it to be. And the research shows that if we can stay with a sensation for as little as 90 seconds, the sensation can start to soften. But what happens is that 90 seconds, as uncomfortable as it is, we try to run away from it. We cut and run. And that's why I love yoga so much and teaching yoga. And we hold poses in yoga. I'm not a big fan of these fast flow power yogas because you don't get a chance to hold the pose. And it's when you hold the pose that you start to get confronted with this need to cut and run, which comes from a mind. And the body then has a chance to stay and hold the pose. This is life, right? As in yoga, as in life.
Yep.
So REA, and the L is to love your experience. You're real when you love all that you are and all that's been given to you. And when we can find the place where we can lean into being real and take these practices on a daily basis. And again, you can't do a push-up once a year and expect to be strong. This is a daily practice, right? When you can find yourself to be real, what happens is the Ing, so real, Ein, I-G-N, you become inspired, and inspired action becomes clear. The pop-ups of what do you need to do, they come up so easily. This is where you find ease into the power and the strength and the offerings that you have. The G is gratitude. You take moments to be grateful for everything, even the stuff you didn't like. And the last thing, the N, is stay in a place of non-judgment. And in your non-judgment, you can find yourself feeling nourished. Non-judgment for self will mean non-judgment for others. So we realign in our lives as a daily practice. And this is what I bring into my coaching business so that we can thrive in all areas of our lives.
Yes. I so love that acronym that you've created there. It is just so beautiful, so powerful. There's so much there. And I encourage the people that are listening, when you're going back and you're watching the recording of this, restart that. Go back and watch that again, because like there's just so much value in that acronym. And if you follow those steps, it will change your life. There's no way it doesn't, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm just going to repeat: R for remember, yes. E for explore, A for allow, L for love. When you can be real, you open up to inspiration, you open up to gratitude, and you open up to non-judgment and nourishment.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And if I can just say the
Yes.
book that I've contributed, a contributing author in this book called Ignite Female Changemakers. It's an international book for female changemakers all over the world have contributed to this book, and it's getting launched on May 30th. And my Realign to Thrive steps are in the book, as well as a part of my story, really the most deep, painful parts of my story, and how I've taken that, those experiences that I've had in my life, and be able to awaken to the possibility and potential and service and joy that I can now embody. It's all in that chapter. And on May 27th to May 29th, Ignite Your Life. So the Ignite company is doing a 3-day live summit. So we were supposed to be in Paris for the launch of our book on May 30th.
Right.
And that's not happening. So instead, what they've done is they're going to do an online 3-day summit for free for anybody who registers. And if you go to my Facebook page, Diana Lockett, you'll see a link for it. I'll probably try to get it on my website too. I haven't done that yet, but dianalockett.com is my website. There'll be a link for the summit, and anybody who registers for the summit will be placed in a draw to receive a free signed copy of the book.
Awesome.
And I'm also going to do a book club, and it's an international book club. So we'll have people internationally, and then for 6 weeks, anybody can join. It'll be done through Zoom. Again, anyone who joins the book club will be put in a draw to receive a free signed copy of the book. And every week there will be a couple of authors from the book that will come and do a live reading. And then we'll get to explore some of their lessons and teachings and come together as community, which is my favorite thing to do, is be in community and to bring hopefulness and possibility and inspiration into the world.
So I'm going to get all of the links from you, just so people know. It's going to be in all of the descriptions on the YouTube, the podcast, so you can find it there. I had the absolute pleasure of getting a chance to peek inside the book, and such a powerful book. And I would really recommend that people go get this book, because there's just so much in it. I mean, look at it. You can see the size of it. And there's
Yeah.
so much. There's just so much in there. I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, it's 50 contributing authors. So it's
Yeah.
a big book. It's actually the biggest. They've put out 8 books. This is the biggest one that they've done, really honoring female change makers around the globe. And people can contact me to get a copy. So I have the copies here to sell. Once it's launched on May 30th, you can reserve a copy through me. And so you can put the link down, Jordan, on the notes. People can reserve a copy through me. And then once it launches on May 30th, the other thing that's going to happen is Amazon will be releasing for one day only on May 30th, a free e-copy. And when you get the e-copy, in exchange for doing the free e-copy, Amazon is asking for a review. So that's one of the ways that books, I didn't know this, get to be bestsellers. And these are best-selling series of books. So if you wanted to get the e-copy, you can do that on May 30th. It's free. And then in exchange, Amazon asks for a review. You could just have a quick look, but the review needs to be on that day. So you look through it quickly and you give your review. But if you actually want a copy, which is like a coffee table copy, like it's such a beautiful book, then contact me and I will get one to you. I will put one aside for you. Yeah.
Fantastic. So is there anything else that you feel we didn't cover? Anything else that you want to say on this podcast?
Well, I have an interesting story, so there's lots to cover, but really what I want to do is remind people that you're going to be okay, right? Whatever you're going through, you're going to be okay. And not in spite of it will you grow and thrive, but because of it, that you have skills and tools and a knowing inside you. No matter what you're going through right now, I get it, because me too. You have a knowing and a strength inside you that is that potentially is unknown to you right now. So don't give up on yourself.
Love that.
Yeah.
Amazing advice. Thank you, Diana. My question for everyone as the listener is, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do with all of this information?
Yeah.
This podcast is turning into something more than I had ever anticipated, but I feel like I am taking so much away from these conversations. Like, these are just so valuable. And so I really want people to think, what am I going to do? Right? We talked about it's in the action. So what actions are you going to take?
Fantastic. Yeah.
Awesome.
And, what I always say is lean into it, right? Lean into it. So even if it's just like 2 minutes a day to start, 2 minutes where you start and you stop and you notice, I was just about to yell at that person who cut me off on the highway. And instead you take a moment and you say, oh my gosh, they're just like me. Sometimes I can be impatient. Sometimes I can be in a hurry and not see other people. And then you take a breath, right? This is remembering that we are all perfectly imperfect and miracles at the same time. And then you take a breath and you just notice what's awake in you. What is this triggered in you? And can you allow it to be, soften into it and love that part of yourself that you recognize can be impatient, right? And then that starts to soften. So practice being real. And even if it's just a moment, but the more you do it, the more it becomes possible. So we lean into this to be able to then create it as an experience of our everyday circumstances in life.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you, Diana, for being here with me today. Again, everyone, all of the links are going to be in the descriptions, so you can find them there. Next week, so that is May 23rd, here in the Facebook group, 10 a.m., I have with me JJ Filipovich. He is the owner of Fifth Dimension Training Academy in Hamilton, Ontario, black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Robert Drysdale, 3 times Abu Dhabi gold medalist, 2018 IBJJF national champion, 2018 Naga Pan Am's champion. And we are going to be discussing his journey of wearing so many hats at the same time. I laugh because I know him, father, technologist, running the martial arts school, trying to maintain business during this crazy shutdown period So I'm looking forward to seeing everyone then, and have an awesome week.
Thank you, Jordan.